So 2 Kings chapter 11. I'll leave you to read this for yourself because it's quite long and I'll be perfectly honest, has some difficult names in it. But attention now turns to the southern kingdom of Judah. The previous chapters of 2 Kings have been looking at what's going on in the northern kingdom of Israel. Now we turn to the southern kingdom of Judah. And there's a power vacuum. And in steps Athaliah. And she's the daughter of King Ahab. Remember him? And he was the king of the north. So this chapter begins with Athaliah trying to take the throne. We read verse 1, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. Now that royal family includes a little boy called Joash, and he's the last of the line of David. Now remember these two. 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 16. This was the promise made to David. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. And then Psalm 89 verse 36. That his line will continue forever and his throne endure before me like the sun. So God has made promises to David. His line, his dynasty will continue forever. But now we're down to the last person, the last little boy. And Athaliah, from the line of Ahab, wants to kill him and other boys in the process. Does this remind you of anything? Moses, perhaps. Exodus chapter 2. And she became pregnant, gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. There's a plot to kill Moses. He had to be hidden. And then what about this? From Matthew chapter 2, when Herod realised that he'd been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. He gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under. Jesus had to be taken to Egypt to hide from King Herod, who wanted to kill him because he felt threatened. So we have Joash, Moses, Jesus. God is at work, albeit here, these 3 instances, in a low-key way. Hide a baby. But look what it leads to. Moses, Joash, Jesus. Sometimes about trusting and being confident that God is at work, even though perhaps we can't see it. Even though at times it may be something that appears to us to be quite ridiculous. Then verse 2, we come across, it says this, but Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram and sister of Azakiah, took Joash. This lady called Jehosheba takes the small boy and hides him, so he's not at risk. But think for a moment of the risk to her. She sees something evil going on. She takes a stand against it. What would the ladies in waiting, what would the palace courtiers have thought of this? But she takes a stand. But notice, let's jump down to verse 4. Notice, she's not on her own. In the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the commanders of the units of 100. she ropes in her husband to help, and he hides him in the temple, verse 3, with his nurse at the temple of the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. So she's not on her own. Her husband helps. Again, when we stand up against evil, whether it's in society, perhaps in the church, we do have allies. There will be people to support us, and we need to be praying that those potential supporters will also stand with us. Then notice, this is the only time she is mentioned. If you like, she does her bit and then disappears off the scene. She's done her bit for God, and other people take the lead. All of us, it's about being in the right place, in the right time, doing our bit so that God's purposes will succeed. And so her husband takes up the story as lead character. He plots to secure the throne for Joash. But notice, he has to wait 6 years, verse 4. It requires patience. And think how often you've pleaded with God to act, but he doesn't seem to act. It's in his time. We need sometimes to learn patience, to wait on him. And of course, patience is one of the fruits of the Spirit, isn't it? But do you notice something else? When God does act and wants us to act, he provides the tools. Verse 5. Take a listen. He commanded them, saying, "This is what you are to do, you who are in the 3 companies that are going on duty, guarding the royal palace." You see, God had provided these companies of royal guards to help. But it might not have seemed very much. But it's about using what you have. And in this case, the royal guard, few in number. But over in 2 Samuel, we read how fiercely loyal they are to David's line. And of course, God provides us with the tools to stand against evil. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 to 20, it talks about the armour of God. It's about using them, the tools that God has given us to fulfill his will. Anyway, the coup is successful. Joash is saved. Athaliah is defeated. Athaliah is executed. Now, to our 21st century minds, that could seem harsh. But it's about dealing thoroughly with the problem, or it will come back to haunt us. Now, for us, that can be about being radical about sin, getting it thoroughly out of the church, out of God's kingdom and people. But it's about dealing thoroughly and completely with the problem. Anyway, as well as getting rid of Athaliah, they get rid of the temple of Baal. And at the end of the reading, we hear that the covenant, that's the promises between God and his people, it's called the covenant, are renewed. And that's basically about the people pledging to be faithful to God and to follow his word. So basically, they're to turn from Baal and turn back to God. Repentance. a happy ending. Joash is crowned king. Or is it a happy ending? We'll see tomorrow. God's kingdom, and in the here and now, that's manifested visibly by the church, is always in danger. From attack, from outside enemies, or maybe the failure of friends. We're called on to stand against it. So do we have allies, and are they prepared to stand with us? We will have allies, but perhaps we need to take the lead. Do we have patience to wait for God's timing? Do we make use of what God has given us? Ephesians 6, that whole armour of God. Are we prepared to be radical about sin? And are we ourselves prepared to promise to turn to God? You see, God's purposes will not be thwarted. God's purpose was that Jesus would be born, that he would come from the line of David. He's not going to be thwarted in that. God is at work, albeit sometimes in a low-key way that perhaps we don't see. And that's one of the things for today, isn't it? Trying to discern where God is at work in this crisis and what lessons the church can learn from it. But he will not be thwarted as he prepares the ground for his Son. And he will not be thwarted in having the church, his bride, presented holy and untarnished. And every single one of us has a part to play. Are you willing to stand up?